Hello, friends and family. Welcome to another episode. Today I'm speaking about one of my favorite topics, balance and harmony. Alignment and attunement, and empowering individuals to find their authenticity and achieve their dreams. I'm going to be speaking today about balance as it relates to the breath, because this is going to offer you a tool that you have each and every moment to align yourself, to attune your vibration to what you want, so that you can attract that in, so that you can bring more harmony to your mind, your body, and your emotions. This idea of balance, the yang and the yin, the masculine and the feminine, has value in all of the most important areas of our life. And beyond the breath, I'm going to be speaking to the major religions and spiritual traditions. I'm going to speak to our mind, our health, our body, and our emotions, and how understanding the yang and the yin in each of the respective domains gives us guidance, gives us pragmatic solutions for enhancing or helping us to find our highest alignment. And what I mean here by alignment, I mean that you're in harmony with the Dharma, with the Dhamma, with the Tao. And those are all in some sense the same concept as expressed by various different traditions. Dharma coming from the yogic tradition, Dhamma being the Pali word for Dharma coming from the Buddhist tradition, and Tao being the Taoist term coming more from a Chinese lineage. But it's all speaking about universal order or harmony. And built into that is sometimes this idea of purpose or duty of the individual. And what's being expressed here, as I'll say it in another way, is really just you acting in your authenticity, which takes it away from that kind of duty, this kind of required action that you have to do, like you have duties at work and you often don't want to do them because they're like chores. Dharma is the most beautiful way of you being in the world because it is natural. In this way, it's not the conditioned self, it's the true self. And when we act in harmony with who we are, that's when our life flows, because we're in harmony with our inner nature, and this will create balance in our external world. So much of our struggle is because we're out of harmony with ourselves. That's the basic suffering that we have. It's an internal resistance to what is. This was one of Buddha's great discoveries and teachings, perhaps not the first to discover it, but a teaching of his no less, is that much of our discomfort, our dukkha, is because we crave and desire pleasures that are outside of this moment that we don't currently have. And there's a seeking that prevents us from being present. There's a detachment there. And so much of our suffering comes from the aversion of what is here that is discomforting, that is not what we prefer, that is not pleasant. And our true self means we're here, we're present for what is true now. And he offered a meditation technique called Vipassana, which is a very valuable tool that individuals can work with to bring themselves into harmony. But there's so many tools. This is just the one that the Buddha shared with through the Buddhist or Dhamma or Vipassana way of being and interacting in the world. But I'm here to express that there are many ways to overcome, if I can speak about that way, this basic detachment that we have from the present moment, so that we can come into greater harmony with who we are, and another way into the reality of the now, and a willingness to have radical self-responsibility, a willingness to be present for what is here rather than what we wish it would be, is to have a dream, like a powerful dream. Because what this does, if you have a dream that is sufficiently beautiful, and it is the optimal decision, meaning it's not just a dream that's best for your selfish desires and needs, for sense, pleasure, for power, for sex and money. But if you have a dream that you want to offer something to the world that would be serving to the all, and this may be the contribution of children and having a family. It doesn't need to be an extravagant dream that is building a major company, but it might be. It might be an organization. It might be an invention. You know what it's going to be? It's going to be what is most representative of who you are and your natural way, which is unique to you, which is your perfect blend of yang and yin, your dynamic alignment and attunement. And it's going to be perfect for you. It's going to feel so good. And the more that we can get into alignment with who we are, we can understand, we can become clear what that vision is, so that we can walk that path. And there's so many ways in which we can come into harmony with ourselves, because we're multi-dimensional beings. There's many different aspects of ourself that can be in or out of harmony. For example, this is my 8-fold coaching system. We can be in or out of harmony with our dream and our pursuit of what we want, what our heart desires. We can be in or out of harmony with the basic forces of yang and yin, with our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. We can be in or out of harmony. Another way of expressing this would be, we can be out of right relationship with heaven and earth, the forces of above and below. We can be out of alignment, another way of expressing harmony, with the 4 directions, meaning we are a discarnate entity. We're detached from our body. We are not embodied because we're in our mind or we're avoidant of this moment. We can be out of balance or harmony with our emotions, positive and negative. Avoidant of negative emotions, stress built up in the system, or attached, craving, clinging to positive emotions, craving sense pleasure. We can be in or out of alignment with the 6 holistic health principles, not necessary to go over them all here. And we can be in or out of harmony and alignment with the 7 chakras as they relate to our finances, our flow of abundance, our sexuality and our sense pleasure, our relationship to power, our attunement to our heart, our alignment with truth, our vision of what is real, relating back to our dream, our dharma, and in or out of alignment with the Tao, the universal order, the universe, to God. And that's 7, if you're counting through the system with me, and 8 would be the 8 dimensions of gratitude. But the whole system there is 8 parts, and there are many other 8-limb systems, such as the 8 limbs of yoga, which is another pathway to finding our highest level of alignment, or the Eightfold Path as extrapolated by Gautama the Buddha. But there are many paths. And this is my entry point into the many paths, the yang and the yin, of religion and spirituality. So, for the remainder of the episode, I'm going to be speaking about a number of different topics. And I want to offer you the polarities, the extremes, and then the middle way. So, I'm going to speak to prototypical masculine religions. And as a note here before we jump into this, as I speak in a more general way about any given concept, like a prototypical masculine religion, like I would say the Judeo-Christian system is, and Islamic, that doesn't mean that any given individual or any given sect or local grouping that still is, in some sense, could be categorized as a Judeo-Christian or Islamic religion is going to fit perfectly into this. But it's useful for speaking in more of a stereotypical way if I'm making generalizations, because if I speak to all the particulars, there's no real way to make the cases that I'm making. So I'm saying that many Judeo-Christian and Islamic religions are more shifted towards the yang, or the masculine dimension. And this is evident in how they speak to the idea of their absolute, which most religions have an idea of what the absolute is, also known as God. And they speak to this God in the masculine form. They say God the Father, He above. They speak to the heavens, which in the Taoist understanding, the yang forces come from above, and the yin forces is Mother Earth, Pachamama. And we can take this idea of masculine God the Father and contrast it with more of a feminine way of seeing things, which would be more of a shamanistic, animist, meaning that everything has spirit or life, much more earth-centered. You can see the difference of these kinds of religions in that the masculine way is much more linear, law-based. The masculine way is much more organizational. It's much more religious in the sense of a conventional religion rather than tribal, rather than not having a hierarchical structure that is representative of an organization, but being more of a communal, organic way of expressing, of doing ceremony perhaps. And once again, to jump back to my preface, my little beginning note here, there's many different types of sects of Christianity which would definitely veer more towards that feminine way as they express their rites and rituals, as they relate to the absolute. And in the opposite polarization, this idea of absolute is really important, because there are different types of absolutes. Absolute light, typically known as God. Absolute darkness, absolute nothingness, is typically yin or feminine. So if you have absolute light, you speak in the positive, and therefore God would have qualities, because if something is in the positives, you say what it is, not what it is not. So if something is spoken about in the positive, it means that God is unconditional love. God is all-knowing. God is omniscient and omnipresent. Whereas if you speak about the absolute in the negative, you say what it is not, which is what is very characteristic of something like various sects of Buddhism, where they don't speak about a God. There is no God. There is only emptiness. There is no self, the not self. Do you see how this works? Just like the positive absolute expression in Hinduism is the self and the Brahman. So once again, there is a God spoken about in the positive. And you have a not self. And the not self is speaking about what the Taoists would call the yin aspect. Because the yin aspect of creation is like the paper that you write upon. If you don't have the paper, there's no art that can be expressed. There's no medium through which you can express things. So it's the infinite field of pure potential, of emptiness, that the creative energy can manifest into form. And it's the relationship between these two. And on either end, there's an absolute infinite expression. But they're in the opposite polarities. And our universe is the interplay of opposing forces of yang and yin. So in some sense, all religions and spiritual practices are ways of expressing, experiencing, and relating to an individual communing with a certain aspect of the absolute. And we see the difference in them depending on where their point of focus is in terms of the absolute. So to jump into the middle path, yoga, qigong, which is, you could say, Taoist, Buddhism, the very word I'm using, the middle way, is a Buddhist way of speaking to things. It's about what is the balance between these two. And how do you know the balance between these two? Well, if you look at many of the major spiritual teachers, you will find that they have traversed from one spectrum to another. Before the Buddha found the middle way, if you want to call it found, or came into harmony at the middle path, he went to the extremes. He fasted for some 40 days, I believe, in seated meditation, I believe. That's going to an extreme of effort, which is more of the masculine quality. And then he surrendered at some point, and somebody offered him rice. And he's like, okay, I will accept. That's the feminine surrender acceptance pole. And through working through these polarizations, he was able to find, as an experience, not as a concept, he had to go through those polarities to find his harmony in the middle. And this dance between expansion and contraction, between the inhale and exhale, is what is always happening. And understanding this alleviates the suffering, the discomfort that so many people feel on their spiritual path, or just in general, if you don't want to speak about it in terms of a spiritual path. Because most people resist that contracted state of the ego, the contracted state of feeling discomfort. But even as you step forward into your enlightenment, or you attune to the realization of your true self, the discomfort doesn't go away, because the yang and the yin is the basic building blocks of this manifest reality. It's the proton and the electron. That doesn't go away. Your resistance to it, the optional suffering, for sure, that can change as you become more equanimous, more balanced, neutral in your relationship to positive and negative. But know, and this is so important, know that the contraction The being out of harmony is a teacher. It's teaching you the middle way. It's teaching you what you do want by what you don't want. It's showing you what's out of alignment so you can bring yourself into alignment. You don't just get to be in alignment all the time. That's not why you came here. You didn't birth yourself into a world of contrast not to know contrast. That's not the setup here. And having an understanding of this allows you a quality of consciousness to move into what may not be immediately or in your habit patterns preferable, but you'll see with greater and greater clarity the value of it, and a willingness to go into it will allow a level of ease and grace to be a stable presence in your life. Building a stabilized sense of equanimity, of being on the path, and being able to ride the highs and the lows of life, to then fully enjoy and embrace, to be fully embodied, to be fully awake in each moment, because many people go to sleep, they step into unconsciousness as things get discomforting, as a habit pattern reaction to stress. So I spoke a little bit about a technique, the Vipassana technique. I didn't speak to the quality of that technique or sharing any teachings on it, but that is one method. And I also spoke to developing and defining your dream as another one, because if you, once again, have a powerful enough dream, you're willing to go through what it takes to go through it. Once again, the dream can be a vision of the gifts you want to give to your life, but it can also be your family. Individuals, I don't personally have any children, but individuals who I know who have children, such as my parents, have taken on an incredible amount of personal discomfort with love for that higher goal. So, yang, masculine, is effortful. Yin, feminine, is surrender, receiving. Now, you can look at different cultures and societies. Kind of a blanket one would be East and West. And once again, as a preface, it's not that black and white. But in general, the West is more yang. It's more external. It's much more masculine. Traditionally, at least, that's the way it's been. Traditionally, the East has been more internal, more spiritual. This is why the West has been the doers, have externally evolved to a greater degree in terms of our technology and our civilization. And the East has been the ones to go deeper internally, developing the systems of meditation and going beyond what in the West is psychological models into the realm of the transpersonal. They've dove deeper. Now, in our modern world, we are becoming, as I see it, more balanced, where East is meeting West. But as a general, the West is still more external, more yang. And this is important to know because if you live in the West, the dominant external force or energy, the value systems that much of society and the individuals operating in has a big influence on you, because your success in a given society to varying degrees is about you being in harmony with the status quo, about how you interact with the dominant forces of the culture and how things are moving. As a personal intro into this, I live in Squamish. It's a very active, doing and effortful place. And I have that side quite developed, but as well, I deeply love and appreciate relaxation, ease, spending dedicated amounts of time introspecting, internal, meditating, deepening into relaxation. And that quality is not as supported in the sense that the rigor of having a business and competing in the market asks for a certain level of commitment. And because those who are at the top and those who compete at that highest level in the culture are so young, it's hard to keep up with them when an individual's not as willing to do that kind of work. Because for myself, I have a higher value in maintaining balance than about achieving an external goal. But someone with the value system that is more young, they may not have that, and that might be very unique to them in how their energies set up for them in this life, or that may be an exploration for them. Because there's been times in my life where I have been deeply developed in the external offering that I have for my life. And I've also been, at a time in my life, much more devoted and dedicated to simply being and very little external activity. This is not a judgment. There's not a higher or lower, right or wrong. We as individuals will typically, if we are to find balance, go through these extremes at some point in this life to find what that balance is. And I offered this as an awareness piece. And in that, I built what's like a sense of permission for myself, because it does relate to our value systems, which this relates to our true self. This relates to our authenticity. This relates to what is important to us. I remember there came a point in my business where I saw what it took to reach a level of success, and I didn't feel that it was in my value systems. I didn't feel that amount of effort was beneficial for being in harmony with my values of who I am, of how I like to spend my energy. I found that I was pushing more for the external success than keeping in harmony with myself. And it wasn't a pattern that I was willing to go down. So I was like, let's change how I want to look at where I want to go with my success, and focus more on finding harmony than growth. Focus more on finding harmony with my values and what is important to me, about the total balance of my life and all the things that I'm after, rather than trying to make it to be successful and sacrificing myself along the way. Now, this is one particular strategy that really resonates with me, because I don't feel that I need to pull myself out of alignment in this moment to get to somewhere in the future. Did I say that correctly? Because there's only ever the now moment. So to sacrifice and pull myself out of alignment in this moment to get somewhere, to think that in that future scenario, I'll just pull myself back into alignment, there was a mismatch there. So my integrity to this moment is important to me. And this isn't to say that there's a skirting away from hard work and a certain amount of sacrifice and offering to the external world. But what I'm offering here, and what is not always offered in the culture, what is not often the dominant voice as I was learning business, is that the most successful place for you is when you're in alignment with who you are. And the more that you are influenced by the external culture, it will continue to influence you, and to the degree that you continue to allow it to guide your actions, behaviors, it's an external force, and it may not be in your best interest. I have a basic trust with being in harmony with Dharma, this universal law, that if I'm in harmony with myself, I'll have enough. I'll have enough financially, I'll have enough food, I'll have all the love I need, all the people I need, I'll have enough when I have a family. It's all taken care of. So this piece is so important for many people because I see a shift happening as each generation has a shift into the dominant belief systems of the culture. And I see a moving away from you sacrifice yourself in order to make enough money so that you can retire, which is so far off, or you sacrifice so that you can get somewhere, but you pull yourself out of harmony with yourself. I see that in the West. I see that as effort. And I know that path because I've traversed it long enough. And my personal way is that it doesn't feel as good as being in harmony with the middle way. And once again, going back into the personal, as I was over efforting, trying to build my business, constantly driving, I was resisting surrendering. I was resisting slowing down and laughing. I was so serious, and I was pulling myself out of being in a receptive mode. And being in a receptive mode, this is why the concept of Dharma and Tao is so important, because it's our fundamental relationship with the universe, and the universe can provide for us, but we can only receive if we're in the receptive mode. If we're always offering, or if we're always praying and asking, we're not actually allowing any space for things to come to us. And what I found was I was efforting, I was putting out, and I was asking, and I was cold calling, and I was just constantly doing things because the underlying idea here is that I didn't have the clients, the finances. I was in a mode of lack. And it was only when I stopped that things could come back. I had already put out so much. That universal principle of what you put out will come back. But I had to give some space for that to come back. And I also had to come out of the idea of not having enough. And this all was internal. This all was coming into harmony with myself. This all was a function of me acting in a way because of external pressures rather than focusing in on what it is from my value systems and how I can act from my value systems, because that's what attunes me to who I am. And that's when I show up most vibrantly. And that's when people actually resonate with me. And that's when my content is received. And that's when I do the most powerful sessions with individuals. And that's when I feel good about doing those sessions. And that's when I'm in a positive state. And when I'm in a positive state, I perceive more opportunities, because when I'm in a negative, stressful state, I'm perceiving from a place of lack. The only way that I maintained my alignment was because I knew how to regulate my nervous system. Because the effort and the ease, the masculine and the feminine, is the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. And the inhaling breath triggers the sympathetic tone, which is our activating or stimulating or effortful pathway. And the exhaling breath activates our parasympathetic, or our resting and digesting, our feminine pathway. And because I was over triggering my sympathetic tone, my body became quite out of balance at so many levels, because I was overstressed, overworking. I wasn't digesting as well. I was becoming like I was in tunnel vision. I was disengaging my social engagement system, which is an aspect of the nervous system that helps us to relate to others in social circumstances. And I was closing off into my stress patterns or control patterns to numb, to self-soothe, which was putting me in many ways out of harmony with the fundamental forces, which was relating to me craving pleasure, pleasant things, and overeating. And I was averse to feeling the discomfort. This is no good, especially as a teacher of nervous system regulation. There are some professions which I suppose you can sacrifice and work 80 hours and get away with it because you're not working with individuals. But as a healer, I'm attuning people to my healthy nervous system when I do healing work with them. If I'm stressed and I'm offering a session, my nervous system isn't resonating at a healthy frequency, and that's affecting their experience. So once again, this is in some level very personal, but there's also universal things here. And so long as you're aware of your value systems, your values, which for me is a conscious process in which I offer individuals in my coaching to get really clear on what the value systems are, because I mentioned conscious process because we inherit value systems based on what we grew up with in our family and in our culture. And these are very ingrained in our subconscious circuits, which affect us at a subconscious level until we become conscious of it. And they affect the things that we perceive, the opportunities, the habit patterns of our mind are influenced, they're grooved in a certain way due to these value systems. And the clarifying of our values allows us to be in harmony with them. This is one of the dimensions of mind that we can bring ourselves into harmony with. And this is where we will be most fruitful in our life, in our ventures. It gives us a guidepost of action, because of the many infinite things that you can do in each moment, how then to choose? It's an internal ask. You can't ask Google what to do of the many infinite things. You can't take some test. I took a test when I was younger, and I asked what occupation I should be in, and it wasn't what I'm doing now, I'll tell you that. So unless we understand how to internally resource ourselves, we can't make the optimal decision. Once again, the optimal decision, what is not only best for us, what is best for our family, our community, and our earth. We can't make the optimal decision which is in alignment with our true nature, what is most important to us, which is in alignment with Dharma, which is in alignment with our dreams, if we haven't done the inner work to determine what those value systems are. I can't tell you how many people have asked, what are your dreams for this life? If you had infinite money, what would you do with your time? And they say, I don't know. I have no idea. That's fine, but that's just a part in the process. And awareness of that says, okay, I don't know what I want to do. No one's going to determine this for me. I can take some time each day, whenever I get the chance, to make a consistent effort to check in with my inner intelligence, the compass of the heart, to choose to do what I love, trusting that my love is the guidepost to the way. Following my bliss will offer a path. Once again, the purpose is not necessarily a giant organization or business that you'll build. So the very act of following your heart is the end goal. If that takes you on a walk, if you paint a picture, if you can do that in your totality, nothing else matters because you know you're on the path. There's a certain sense of where the mind can be at rest. Whereas when you're off the path, the mental programming and conditioning that many of us have is, this is what I'm doing, but is it enough? Am I enough? Oh, but I still have to worry about tomorrow, and my RSPs aren't paying that well right now, and my 401k is blah, blah, blah. Those mental programs are running in the back of many people's minds because they're not doing exactly what they're meant to do, which is their Dharma. When you do your Dharma, you know that you're at the right place at the right time, doing exactly what you need to be doing, and you have everything you need when you need it, regardless of how much money you have in the bank, regardless of how fit you are, how smart you are. If you're single, doesn't matter, all those external conditions. When you know, you know. And most people don't have that level of ease and clarity in their mind. And the persistent thinking that much of the Western world is so addicted to is a product of this, because people's heads are so filled with distractions and culture telling them what to do, when to do it, all these pressures, pushing value systems on them. And this, I'm not saying is all necessarily some evil doer doing all this stuff. A lot of this is just subconscious and unconscious. These are just the way things are due to the momentum of the past. The best thing that any individual can do is to know themselves. Know themselves in relationship to their goal. Know themselves in relationship to the two fundamental forces. Be in right relationship to heaven and earth. Be in relationship to the four directions around them. Be present in this moment, not in past and future. Be aware of their emotions, positive and negative, and the balance between them. Be in harmony with the 6 holistic health principles. Be in alignment and attunement with the 7 chakras. Be in a receptive state of gratitude for whatever is happening. And when we can do this, this is the 8-limb path of my holistic alignment coaching system. Once again, there's other systems, and you can create your own system. And so long as it's comprehensive, you can live in that state. This is the key. If you're in that state where you know you have everything you need, when you need it, you know what you need to do, when you need to do it, and you're doing it, and you don't have a bunch of voices in your head saying, are you good enough? Am I good enough, pardon me? Am I doing the right thing? Do I have enough money? Oh, I'm doing this now, but what about the future? What about the past? If that's going on, then there's a higher level of alignment. There's some things there that can be organized in a way where you can surrender more deeply. So yang and yin. Understanding, like as you continue to relate to these two fundamental forces, it's like a software that your mind begins to identify this and that. This is why when I look at like religious systems, when I look at individuals, when I look at nature, when I look at things, I see this. I see, the particular trees outside my window right now, they have this contrasting balance between some of the softer evergreen and the darker tones, and there's all this contrast in life. And we become conscious, and we become more conscious by the understanding of contrast. It's an intelligence. It's an awareness. A very good chef knows about contrast and balance, how pairing sweet and salty can be really good, or crunchy and soft. A good mover or dancer or martial artist typically knows how to become firm, rigid, linear, and explosive, but also how to become soft, fluid. An individual who has a good emotional intelligence understands what it is to know their negative emotion, to experience them, to express them, and to detach from them. This is masculine and feminine. Feminine is the expression of emotion. Masculine is the detachment. And the beauty of it is when you can express with detachment, meaning that you can express negative emotion to clear it from your system, such as anger, but you're detached from it, because some people express negative emotion, but they're still attached to it, the stories and the anger, and it's not releasing. So too with positive emotion. Some people can express positive emotion. They can reach very beautiful places, but they get attached to that emotion. And then they cling to it. And then they crave it. Going back to the craving of pleasure and the aversion towards discomfort. As soon as we put ourselves into that position, we throw ourselves off our capacity to be in equanimity, to be in balance and in harmony. So equanimity is very foundational in many meditative traditions because it's a very beautiful quality of mind. It's not in that state of craving or attraction, and it's not in a state of aversion. Equal parts positive and negative. It's the expression of being masculine and feminine. This is why if you look at a statue of the Buddha is not a very muscular person. This isn't saying you can't become a Buddha and be a muscular person. But the Buddha is often represented as having a very flowing body, very soft features, and sometimes even breasts. Because he is a masculine, he's a man, but he has integrated the qualities of the feminine. And so too, you see many different art forms that also express this symbolically. Not all of them, but of course many of them, where the women will look very manly. And this is an expression of a woman who has mastered her masculine polarity. And this is when we can be in harmony and have dynamic flexibility. Because life asks, let's say it another way. Life offers us many opportunities or challenges. And if we have a set way of reacting and responding, especially if it's unconscious and out of conditioning, it might not be the most easeful way of approaching that circumstance. Sometimes life is really hard on us. And if we react by efforting against it, sometimes we put ourselves at odds with life. And sometimes in that same scenario where life is being really hard on us, we can soften and just allow it. Like I'm experiencing, it's winter. I feel that winter, especially in the West, I've never experienced winter in a place that's very sunny, but in the West we experience the 4 seasons, and winter is a time for not a lot of growth, much more stillness. All of nature is resting, dying, hibernating, becoming still. And there's a bit of a harshness there. So my business and work slows down. I had a number of physical injuries, and I totaled my car, and my father's quite ill. A number of things going on there, right? And it's not the season that I feel that it's best to fight against that. If I went into overdrive work mode and tried to grow my business in winter, it feels very much out of harmony. And my training, physical training, I don't work as hard in terms of trying to get physical growth. I'm not in the gym doing my hardest workouts. I'm focusing more on meditation, more on alignment, more on softening and rebalancing my body. And in response to any harshness, I'm just allowing. I'm like, okay, I don't need to grow at this time of the year. I don't need to be in a constant state of yang growth. I can hibernate. I can rest. I can rebalance my body. Some people use this in a negative way, but I can just go into survival. And I mean that in a positive way. I can just go through life and not need to be in a state of thriving in a very external way. And then in summer, if life hands me the same challenges, when lots of yang energy in the air, then I might go, okay, let's go to martial arts. Let's train really hard. Let's make a plan and let's hit it all around the clock as often as I can with as much energy as I can, because that's reflective of that season and that feels in greater alignment to me. So you see how there's a dynamic flexibility that's also, as I've expressed it in the example, not just related to me as an individual, but in keeping with the external environment, which is, in my understanding and expression here, a higher representation of me being in alignment with Dharma, with the Tao, which is the universe as it is, as it's happening. Because I'm not separate from the universe. So as the seasons change, my strategies for life change. I change. And the more that we can eat in those seasons, the foods that grow, the more that we can flow. Like I organize my whole business structure with the seasons. The winter, I'm creating many systems. I'm developing ideas. I'm planning retreats. I'm doing very little events. I'm working much less in some sense. And in spring, I'm going to start to plant or implement these ideas, allow them to take form. And then in summer, I'm going to be doing a lot of the external work, the service, the acts, and I'm going to grow. And then in the fall, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to receive from what I've offered. And then in winter, I'm going to really slow down, reflect on what went right, what went wrong, checks and balances, and then repeat that cycle again and again. This is another aspect of living in harmony, which once again, the West is so developed in the external action. Once again, offering it as a valid way, but also offering that driving all year round has a certain tax on the system, and it might not catch up immediately, but when individuals become in their 30s or 40s, their systems start to slow down. And it's hard to keep up. And if you've built a way in life, a way in your business, or a way of, driving all year with BMXing and biking and running, and then all winter snowboarding, and you never rest your body, there's a tax there. So the more that we can be in harmony with our nervous system, with the two fundamental forces, we can live in a way which is more in balance, which allows the fullness of life. Once again, coming back to my personal example, when I was in that state of efforting, there was no receiving life. There was no hanging out with friends. My business was, yes, becoming successful, but I had lost touch with many people in my life that I was close with. And I certainly wasn't in a relationship and having a lot of love in life. And I don't think I've really spoken about it in great detail, but the other path, as an equally valid opportunity to explore, is the total surrender path. I've been speaking more about the middle way, but the other way is full surrender. This is like when you buy a ticket to India with no return and you just go. You find your own way. You travel the world with no plans, with trust, in a feminine flow. And this is a capacity that many individuals in the West haven't developed. Because, once again, our culture has certain values. Typically, when someone has done high school, there's a pressure, in some sense, to go to university within a year or two and to create long-term plans and goals and retirement and steady income. The idea of going somewhere for years at any age, 20s or 30s or 40s, and not continually investing is not as in alignment with the cultural values, or at least the dominant way that most people operate in the culture. And once again, there is such a pressure, because in order to live and in many ways to thrive in the West, for example, to have children, there is a certain amount of financial need. And if you do go the pathless path and go travel for many years, you might put yourself up into some challenges if you come back to the West and want to integrate in the West, and you've lost the decade of financial investing in that sense. This is a decision that we make to live here. And as we become more empowered as deliberate creators of our life, it's a question that we have to ask: are the values of my culture reflective of who I am, and can I thrive here? Or is there a better part of the world that I would be better suited to live? Because if your dominant values are more, let's say, living in Bali, which is a much more feminine place, you can see this in the non-linearity, the increased connection with nature and spirit and spirituality and not materiality. Though once again, things are of course changing, and this is not a complete and accurate depiction of everything. It's more of a generalization. But traditionally, many Eastern places, Bali as an example, has a much more feminine flow. And if you're an individual who wants to explore that part of life, that may be the most reflective or representative place for you to go in order to find that full expression. Once again, this is not necessarily an end goal, but a part of your journey. And maybe that would help you to find the middle way. It depends on your path, because ultimately you're the conscious creator, and you know at a deep level what you came here to do, what you came here to learn. There's no right or wrong. You can find yourself in complete contrast to the way that you live and the way of the society, and maybe that's the best place for you because you want to experience that contrast. Maybe you like to be the individual who is the yogi meditator in a very effortful culture so that you can be very unique. Or maybe you want to be among thousands of meditators, all meditating in peaceful commune bliss. It's a choice. It's a choice. Once again, when we get really clear on our values and we become empowered as deliberate and conscious creators, that we can choose what we want for this life, not what is impressed upon us from the conditioning or the cultural, societal values or our family's influence. But when we can get really clear on what is most important to us, this is when we find our alignment and our attunement. I've worked with the word alignment for a while, but I've recently been working with the word attunement. In some sense, it's the same thing. But I looked up the definition, and it means to bring into harmony, which I had a little chuckle because I call my path the way of harmony. I very much like the word harmony. It means to join, which, funnily enough, is pretty well the definition of yoga, which is union. And this is the funny thing about the path, not many people that I know talk about Dharma, Tao, and Dhamma, but they're really the same thing. Because this is my path to walk many paths and to find my own way. Once again, always jumping back to the masculine, feminine, the polarities. Many people walk a linear spiritual path. They follow Buddhism, they follow yoga, the 8 limbs, they follow Taoism, they follow Qigong. I like to go and do all those and dance and work out and do martial arts and do plant medicines and walk all the worlds. And that's where I find my alignment. That's where I feel in harmony. That's where I'm in yoga. That is yoga. And there's an empowerment there because the majority of people I encounter as I go hang out, as I just have at the Vipassana center, they speak about the path in a particular practice and a way and staying in alignment with that. And so too with other traditions. Oh, if you don't have, you can't follow more than one path, you don't have the time. These paths are too big, you'll never reach any heights. Well, maybe I don't want to reach a height. Maybe I just want to be here in the moment because it's not a goal outside of this moment. My goal is to be in harmony with myself. And if This is the particular path I'm on, is to walk many paths. Not saying it will be for the rest of my life. Maybe I'll choose to become a born-again Christian and just do that. But right now, that's not most reflective and representative of what is most natural for me. Combining multiple systems, multidisciplinary, and weaving them together in a way that is authentic and not overdoing it, of course, because you can do this incorrectly, but you have to do things incorrectly sometimes to do them correctly. But you can do them in the sense incorrectly by, like, as an example, trying to learn 5 languages at once and learning a few words of each a day. You're not going to get very far. But if you focus and you learn a lot of one language, or learn the whole language, and then you move to the other, you build the area in your brain that learns languages. And then from one level of mastery to another is much easier. So this is why I focus very much at times on one thing or the other, and then at times I do them all at once. So there's an intelligent way to do this, and I know this because it's been my whole life's pattern. I've always done this. In some sense, always. You gotta be careful when you say the absolutes, always and never. I've always, in some sense, or most of the time, done this throughout my life, and I've recognized it as a pattern, and I've recognized how to succeed at it. This is knowing the self. One last piece that I want to talk to, jumping back into spirituality, and spirituality in a pragmatic sense is the deeper meaning beyond ourself. Spirituality in some sense is the most deepest why that we have for why we are here. It's beyond our purpose. It's really unspeakable. And that's why I speak a lot to it. And I recognize that many people don't define their spirituality and are very spiritual. So they're probably not listening to this. I assume most people who listen to this are very much in tune with the word spirituality. And I speak from many different stances, such as I speak to God and Creator, and sometimes I speak to the Absolute and God doesn't exist. And that's all perfectly fine. There's no paradox in that for me. And I speak about spirituality because it's, in my understanding, another part of our development. There's this part in which our ego and our body and our mind can grow, and we can grow a nice strong body, or flexible or mobile body, or become very talented in our body. We can become very sharp in our mind. We can learn many languages. We can do many things in that sense. And there's a part of us which we can call the spirit, we can call the soul. Once again, the Buddha didn't use the word soul. You don't need to use the word soul. Once again, there's no paradox in there for me. But we can talk about another level of development, which is much harder to speak about. Once again, in some sense, you can't really speak about anything spiritual. As soon as we bring it down into language, we've put it into a concept, and it takes away some of the essence. But we can always point like a finger pointing to the moon. But it's like another level of development of our humanness, about our connectivity and our capacity to be a collective, experience ourselves as more than ourselves. And there's many teachings around how to enter into this. And ultimately, I love to empower individuals to find their own way, because I'm putting out a frequency of who I am, acting from my authenticity, and I know that the people who will resonate most with me are going to be quite similar to me. Of course, I'll attract a number of individuals who think oppositely, as I love to listen to individuals who have opposite opinions than me as well, so long as they can express them in an articulate way that allow me to listen and hear, to allow them to be a mirror for me to learn more about myself. But most people will listen to my content because they are on a similar wavelength. And one other piece that I want to offer is another polarity of top down and bottoms up for your own awareness and integrations. Now, top down is when you learn something kind of from like your mind, and then you integrate it into embodiment. And this is how a lot of religions teach. This is how a lot of systems teach. They give you rules. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't kill, don't masturbate, whatever it is. The other way is bottoms up. Bottoms up is when you enter into certain types of practice in which the intelligence of the body guides you. It's coming from the subconscious, so it guides you in a way that, in some sense, is like the universe dancing through you. Dance is a great example. If you're doing ecstatic dance in a healing ceremony, there's a capacity for you to drop out of your conscious mind, out of your ordinary, regular self and how you move through the world in terms of recognizing your mental formations, your thoughts, and how you even walk and embody yourself. And there's a capacity to move out of that, and you get into what could be termed a flow, or a way of moving and being, in which the body is now moving you as if you are a marionette and you are just a doll that the gods are playing, that the universal forces, which, I'm expressing that as if the gods are outside of yourself, and in some sense they are, because there's many perspectives, and it's not a paradox for me. But in some sense, it's just your higher mind as well. So whatever makes you feel more comfy, or however you want to enter into that. But there's a seemingly external force, which is not the ordinary way in which you think, perceive, and have action in mind. And this is a very much bottoms up way of relating and expressing. And there's great healing in that. There's a great level of surrender. This is why it's the more feminine pathway. It's relating to the body, which is much more connected to the earth body, made of the 5 elements. And in my understanding, in my recognition, there's the balance between these, which is also the middle way. See, the problem with top-down is, like Buddhism and Christianity are great because they have many of these foundational morals and ethics in their fullness understood, and they make sense, right? They're very coherent. It's good not to steal, it's good not to lie, but simply knowing that and teaching that only allows it to be registered by the individual learning at the intellectual level if they recognize it, or they understand it because a authority figure is telling it. It's a whole nother thing to know the truth of what is being expressed from your experience. And the only way to do that is to experience it. And typically the best way to do that, best can be objectified there, but the best way to do that would be to steal or to lie, so that you know the difference between right or wrong, which is in some sense more of a bottoms up. And in some sense, the negativity or the challenge with bottoms up in that sense is like a tantric way of saying there is no right or wrong, so do what you do. You explore all of your pleasures. You don't deny yourself. You don't go into celibacy. You can fuck all you want. But what will happen, if you're wise and conscious, is that you'll find that your exploration of your personal desire won't bring you the lasting fulfillment. You'll get to a point where you've slept with 1,000 people and you're still empty inside. And that will inspire you the authentic understanding of right or wrong, about your individual path and how you relate, because you have the experiential and direct wisdom, rather than it being a top-down process of you knowing what is right or wrong, but not truly knowing. So that's really important to know. And all of this, ultimately, as I've expressed earlier, is mostly just permission for you to do exactly what you're already doing, and to offer more totality and even more consciousness, which might change what you're doing, but to give yourself permission as an offering to become in harmony with yourself, which is to recognize what is out of harmony, which is to recognize many of the impressions of external forces and how they create imbalance or Or I'm thinking of a specific word, but it's not quite coming to me. All kinds of neuroses. That's the word. Neuroses within the self, or compulsivity towards thinking, all number of things. And to take a moment now to connect to attune to who you are. Maybe do something authentic, like making a silly noise or making a face that is creative and spontaneous, which will allow you to move into your authenticity, and do this with no judgment. And from that carefreeness, from that openness to explore without judgment, allow yourself to think, to feel what you can do after this that is most representative of what you love, what is most exciting for you. It doesn't have to be anything grand. To give some thought or reflection to what your dream is. Once again, not necessarily a dream beyond the moment, but it could be if that really excites you and shifts your vibration now. But what is most exciting for you to do, and are you in balance? Are you in balance with the two fundamental forces? Do you need energy? Do you need rest? Do you have energy to create? Are you in harmony with heaven and earth? This could mean, are you aware of your surroundings, the four directions? Are you aware of the earth? But it's also, have you built a relationship with the forces of nature? Have you gone outside, simply said? There's something that happens when we're out in nature. We're born onto this earth. I don't want to go as far as to say we're not meant to live simply in cities, but it's just so much easier to be in harmony with the cosmos if you're experiencing and relating to the earth being that is living and breathing and nurturing us. There's a certain level of disconnect which is hard to, for me, hard to maintain my highest level of alignment if I'm not outside. There's a balancing. There's a level in which our alignment and attunement happens easily. Remember, this is the middle way. Not so much effort. Not so much effort. Not complete ease, not flaccidity, not collapsing, but the balance of sithara and sukha. Are you in harmony with your emotions? The 5 negative emotions: anger, anxiety, worry, fear, and sadness. Are you holding any of these that you're not willing to see? What are they related to? How to release them: breath work, 6 healing sounds, qigong. Many ways, pardon me. Are you in balance with the 6 fundamental forces of holistic health? Breathing, moving, thinking, sleeping, drinking, and eating. What about the 7 dimensions of finances, sense pleasure, relationships, and sex? That's all one. Power, love, your expression, your relationship to truth, and your relationship to God or the universe itself. This is one of your most fundamental relationships. It's no different than your relationship to the breath. Those who relate to their breath with love and appreciation appreciate the gift of life for what it is, not how they wish it would be. Those who are devoted to their breath in a way that is conscious, or devoted to the process of life, because as you relate to the fundamental force of life is how you perceive the life that you live. If you relate to life, to God, to the universe as unconditional love, you will walk this world in that vein, and you will move forward towards your goals and your dreams with trust that you'll be supported. If you relate to God as a vain or punishing or dangerous, or however you want to relate to it in a negative sense, then you will perceive that, you will project that onto the world. Once again, this isn't just external God as in the white bearded guy in the sky. He's great too. But the breath, the spirit that animates, that embodies, that invigorates, that is the life process. which is you, which is not outside of you, which is the non-physical part of you. Being in harmony with the breath is why Vipassana technique is so effective for coming into balance with Dhamma, because you sit typically for an hour and you allow the breath to move in and out until it naturally harmonizes. Like sediment sinks to busy waters and the water becomes clear. The representation or the metaphor there is that the impurities of the mind, the problems that we perceive, are the sediment, and as we relax for a sufficient amount of time in practice, everything can calm. There are many practices, conscious connected breathwork that I share with individuals, Qigong that I share with individuals, yoga, many types of meditations, dance, martial arts, however you can become total. This might be art for you, creating and painting or reading. You'll notice, consciously or unconsciously, your breath will stabilize, will balance. These are the two fundamental forces of yang and yin. This is your connection to spirit. Spending enough time with your breath, with nature, will pull you into alignment, which will bring you into harmony, which will bring you clarity of mind, of what is important to you, which will allow you to come into full embodiment, meaning full presence in this moment, not as a piece of your past, which is repeating in cycles. You're free, you're liberated from that. So you can make conscious and deliberate decisions to orient your mind towards what you want. And as you continue to think, dream affirmative thoughts, your thoughts become things, and your manifest reality becomes that which you want, because it's that which you desire, because your mind is in alignment with what you want. Where you focus is where the flow of energy goes. You are a powerful creator. It takes just a few minutes to find alignment and attunement, to let go of the thoughts and the emotions that are not serving you, and to orient your mind into alignment, into attunement with what you want, to come into harmony. Then you're an empowered individual who offers their vibration as an example for others, which is all we can ever do. We're not here to heal or save others. We're here to save ourselves and to empower our actions, to turn within and not need to control external forces that are not in our control. We can allow them. This is the giving and receiving, the right use, the right relationship, and the skillful means of how we use our energy. Thank you all for listening to this podcast. Aya Om.